Yes, okay, thank you. Last week class we continue our class from the HTML element. We talked about the header class again last week. Then talked about different paragraph, the different formatting, text formatting element that we have in HTML. That's bold, italics, superscript, subscript, even small and other ones. We talked also about styling of the text itself. If you want to add some style to our text, to a paragraph or header or anything, we talked about that. We also talked about links. We talked about links to an absolute page, probably outside of the current website we are working on, to a relative page also, and also an anchor link within the same page. An anchor link within the same page. So today, as I posted in the group chat, we'll be handling on table. Tables will be what we'll be working on today, what we'll be learning today. So a table is basically, hello, can you hear me? Let me be sure my internet is working fine because hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. So, but
Okay.
it seems as if your internet is not strong. So, or maybe
Yes,
my internet, I don't
no,
know.
no, it's my
Maybe other
internet.
can confirm.
My main internet has been down since morning, so I'm just using a hotspot from my mobile phone.
Okay, sir.
Uh, that might be. Just give me a second. Let me check if it's back up. Give me a minute, sorry. I still have to manage this particular mobile internet. My main internet is still down. But can you hear me, Victor? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So just bear with me. If my video might be a little bit lagging, I will try to slow down as much as I can today. Okay. So what we are treating today is tables in HTML. So a table is basically a combination of rows and columns. So I don't know if you've seen probably like an Excel or okay, yes, just like Classroom where we have different rows, and then we have the columns. So rows are what can I use to describe rows? Rows are actually the vertical items, right? Like the vertical items. Say, for example, I want to create a table of data of about students. So I want to create a table of students. So I decide to collect their names, even though this is not a table in itself. Or let me just use this. Okay. I think I can use Excel to describe that, to describe what a table is to us. If it's just open Excel. Can you see my screen? So just the way my Excel interface looks like this, that we are seeing different A's, B, C. This is like a table in itself. For example, what am I writing now is like a table. So we have the different rows. Row is actually vertical, and we have col. Oh, sorry, row is not vertical. Sorry, we have rows are horizontal. We have different rows, like different rows. Row is a particular record. It's horizontal, sorry, as against what we might be thinking. Row is actually horizontal. Why we have a columns which are vertical items. I don't know if you get that. Columns are vertical items. So for a row in itself actually represents a complete set of data. So if I'm creating a table of student record. Student
Mr.
record.
Yomi, I can hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me clearly. Uh, Problem spreadsheet. Let me be sure. Okay, hold on. Okay, I'm just trying to check if how to get my internet to be better, but because my main internet, for some reason, it's not been working fine, and I've not been able to get. Guess I want to check it. So I'm using fiber net, and I think because it's weekend, they've not been able to check it out. So, but is it a bit better? Is it better? Wait, who's connected? Sorry. Hello. Is this better, Victor? Right, or I don't know. Who spoke just.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think it's
it's better.
better.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So okay, okay. So let me just go back to what I was explaining. I was trying to explain the what consists of a table. A table is basically a combination of rows and column. So a table in itself could actually represent a set of information. For example, let me say we are having a a an information about student data, information about the student data, right? So basically, a student data could be something that actually have we probably have their first name, last name. Sorry, I'm used to. Let me put a space in between. Department, matric number. Okay, let's just stop at this point. So this, for example, I want to probably have this. Probably this could itself be like a table. So we have the first name, last name, match number, so. So under this, let me just start with this. Yomi, Olatunji, PAM 08294. So, so on the table, it contains both rows and records. So as I was trying to mention, rows and column, sorry, rows and column. So rows are horizontal data, are just horizontal line. They're horizontal like this. So they at times when it comes to data in itself, they actually represent like a complete set of data. Like in this case, there is a student record. It's just information about this particular student. So there might be another student. So rows most likely is just the horizontal record that can represent probably a particular record. So rows is horizontal itself. That's just the main thing I want us to notice to remember. And column is vertical. Row is horizontal while column is vertical. So in HTML, we have we can create a table in itself. Probably in our website, we might want to have a table for different reasons. At times, you want to use the table to structure what your website looks like. Probably you want to put some information in some places and some things. We're actually going to be using the table for different things today. I just hope we have the time to do everything I planned for today. But not wasting time. So let's just dive into some practical, some coding for this for the class today. So I've created this template, but I'm going to delete the content. So we can start. So we already know the structure of our HTML page, right? I believe by now we are used to this. We start with our doc type, then the first closing and opening tag is the HTML. HTML opening tag and the closing tag. Then we have head and body. And within the head, we can add our title. So today's class is tables. Let me HTML table. So to declare the structure of table in HTML actually starts with the tag called tables. Just with tables, it stands for tables. So it's going to start with tables and is a paired tag. So it has an opening tag and a closing tag. This is just a way to declare like a table itself. Just declare it, just the main elements that actually has that table that actually encapsulate that is the parent of the whole structure we want to define. So within the table elements, so now, as I mentioned earlier, we have rows and we have column. Do you remember? Rows are horizontal, right? And in HTML, you define the rows, and within the rows, you define the columns that are within it. So you first of all define the rows, and within that, you now start defining the columns. So let's see, what's the tag for rows? The tag for row is TR, which just means table rows. TR. TR is table rows. I don't know what TT means. But this is the row itself. So within this particular row, we might want to have a particular set of column. But one thing we should always try and maintain is the rows should always tables, because the rows for each rows that I have to define, they should have the same number of columns. They should try to have the same number of columns. There are exceptions, and we are going to go to it where we can actually have them not to have the number of columns. We are going to get to that later. But at the beginning, we need to make sure that the rows have the same number of columns. So let's do the first one actually. So for the columns within it is TD. Is TD, and they are all paired tag. They have closing and opening tag. So this is the row. This is the first row, right? This is one row, and within it I can have multiple columns. Multiple columns. So let me for example. Okay, let me just add one more column first, right? I hope you can see my screen and I'm able to follow along. Hello. So let
Yes,
me okay,
we can
yeah.
see it.
Okay, all right. So let me just go back a bit. So if we start with the table tag, and within the table tag, which is actually a pair tag, it has an opening and closing. Remember, our closing tag starts with like a slash. Oh, that's the difference between the opening and closing tag, slash. So within it, within that table tag, we are going to define as many rows that we are trying to have. And within each rows, we are going to be defining the columns. So for example, this is one row, just one row like this. And within that, we have the column. So this is the first column. So let's put the content of what's going to be in each cell is going to be in the column now. So the column comes in the row. So now within the column, I'm going to type the content name. Oh, let me name it first name. Let me use first name so that match what you have there. First name, then let's use the same one, last name. So this is another column. So let's do four so match the example we have in that Excel sheet. Departments. Let's do matrix number. So now this one row and multiple columns. So I'm going to save this file. Okay, I've read it. So I believe you still remember how to save it. When you click on save, then if you're using those pass plus plus, I am using notepad plus plus for this class. So you can actually use notepad plus plus. It's just a bit more advanced than typical notepad that we used the first time. So if you're using notepad plus plus, when you click on save, let me use save as. You go to under the option and you can search for the exact file. You know, the file, what we are building is HTML, so which is hypertext markup language. So I choose that particular file. I give it a name, choose that file. I'm saving it in a particular location. I'm not okay. I can just place it. So I'm saving it there, and then I can go to that to where I saved it. Table. That's what tables, right? And click on that. So it's going to appear in my browser. So even though it's not looking like a table right now, but these are what we did right now. So these are the column. These are each of the data that we put in. We are going to add more rows so that it can be a bit clearer, right? And we will continue from there. So let me just go back to the code and let's add one more row to it. Row start with tr. So as a good practice, when you actually when you open a new tag, try to close it immediately so you don't miss the closing tag. So we're adding column. So the first row have three columns, 4 columns, sorry. So the next one also should also have 4 columns. CD, 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 CD. So 4 columns. Then the first column here is the first name, right? Because this is the first column here. So this one will be coming directly under it, which is the first column. So the first name, Yomi, last name. So we can save this. I've saved it. So just like the first one we have here, we have the four columns in it. So I'm also having 4 columns in the next row. So we can keep having multiple rows and multiple rows as much as we want. Then this we keep having rows and they have the columns within them, right? So let's go to I want to go to the web page and let's see what it looks like. Refresh this. So now it's coming here. The rows, the first name comes under it. You notice last name comes under it. It comes under it. So for us to make our table more clearer, I think we should just add border to it. So to add border to HTML page, there are different ways of adding border. There's a simple way of just adding within the HTML, and there's a way of going to style the page. So for right now, I'm just going to show us the way of just adding it as an attribute into the HTML tag. Yes. So in our table tag here, which is the parent one, in our table tag, we can have an attribute that we can add an attribute to it called border, and it's going to have and it's going to have a value. So the way you define attribute, so this is the attribute name, and then the content should be here. I think last week we worked with some attributes, especially when we are styling our tests. So just let's just so border, then for it to have border, I use one. It's just one. If I don't want it to have border, it's zero. So zero is there by default. When I didn't put anything, it's just go don't put it any border. But right now we can use one. Save this. So now if you can see border equals to, then it's going to be in quotes, double quotes, and the value is one. So this is coming inside our table tag, the main parent tag itself. Main parent tag itself, right? So let's check what does it look like now. So now I think this makes it more clear that it's actually a table that we've created. So we can see how it's being segmented. Like, okay, we have um the main one, how they align each row ones, why they actually align vertically. So the ones on that is actually going to fall under this one that is going to fall under this. So we can see it clearly now, right? I hope you can. So we can just let me just add like two more columns so it's more clearer and it's more so we can get the main idea clearer. Then from there we can move to something else. We can move to something else under this table. Mm, why did let me just put B M assume it's B. So I just try to add more columns and then we can see more rows, sorry. So you can see what it looks. So once you keep adding more rows, it actually appears everything is going to align and that. So let me do something that one of these columns you actually have a long name and then we can see what happens exactly. If, for example, I use this here. So how table behaves is this. So it shifts all the columns. So we can you can actually see how it looks nice. So it shifts everything for it to be able to actually accommodate this guy and shift them here. So they still align. So for example, assuming we remove the border, let's remove the border and see. We see why it could be important in our design. So when we remove, even when it doesn't have a border, by default, it just notice that everything still aligns perfectly. These the ones the department column, the ones under department, they are not moving close to this one. They all align perfectly. They will always be in the same rows, the same column, sorry, perfectly aligned every time. So in our page design, in what we even be doing today, we might want to like try to align some elements, put some elements some places. We want to put something at the end. We want to put something at the right. I just want everything to align perfectly to look very nice. So table can actually help us in doing that very well. Tables will help us to do that very well. So we've defined. So we just did the table column and table rows and column, right? But there's also one more thing that we can actually look at, which is header. So we can actually define the header separately, even though it will probably not look so much different. But there's an element in HTML called TH, which is for table header. So for example, the first row I have here is actually for the header. So instead of me just putting table rows and then within it just putting TD for column, I can actually specify that it's for header, and instead of using TD, I can use TH. Let me delete the contents completely. So I can use TH for table header. All right. Instead of TD is just for the content. I don't even know what TD stands for again. So we can have the TH, right? So the header in this case, we have four headers. So just the same way we actually define this TD, just that in this case, instead of using TD, we are using TH for the header now. We're having a header. It's not compulsory for us to always have this in our table. If you don't have an header in the table, probably we are just showing something. But for example, in what I'm showing here, which we have header, we can show it, we can do it this way, and then we have something like TH last name department. Street number. Let's check. We probably won't really see a difference. Okay. Okay, it's even bolder a bit. Yeah. Okay. It's a bit bolder, and then the alignment is a bit different. So, but we can always tie them separately. One thing that actually makes us having the TH defining the header separately from the body is we can always be able to style it separately. We can always target it to be like, okay, I want just the header to look like this, So the TH actually stands for table header. So there is also one more. Should I go to that? Okay. So let's just go to the border itself. Let's just go to the styling of the border. So we will notice that our table actually picked it defined its own color, its own width and the space and everything. And for example, you actually just pick a particular page that actually contains just all the contents. It's not filling up the whole page. Assuming we want it to actually fill up the whole page, spread everything out. How will you have been able to do that? So we are going to be treating on the size itself. Like how can you make it to be this size to actually spread out and everything? So for us to be able to do that, we can define the width of our table using style. So today again, we're going back to that style that we were using last week to do some formatting of our text, like adding colors and background colors and some things to it. So for us to be able to say, okay, this particular table, we don't want it to just be that small size that actually picks just for the content. We want to actually fill up the whole sheet. So I can do something like style, right? Width column 100%. So I can say that the width should be 100%. Let me remove this long list here, right? Let me remove this one. So it can. But let's come back to this style. Then width equals 100%. So with this, the table is going to take the full 100% of the screen. Actually, what it means it's going to take 100% of the parent class, and the parent is the whole screen. There's nothing outside this table. So for example, so let's refresh this page and see what happens. So now instead of it just staying there, now it has spread out to the full screen, right? It has spread out to the full screen and then it has spread out and pick up the whole space, and also the columns have actually been evenly spread out. But also we can actually decide how we want each of these columns to be spread to be the width of each of these columns, right? Assuming I don't want everything to be equally spaced, the same way it has done it now. Probably I want which one? Probably I want last name to be much longer than this. I want last name alone to take 50% of the whole screen. I can actually come to the the first one here on the header, the first row here in the header, and specify the same way we did it in the first one, which is style. The same way we did it in the table equals to, so style is the HTML attributes. Then we have the property, which is width. What we're trying to find here is width. Then I can say 50%. So 50% says 50% simply means this guy, which is the main one, has taken 100% of the page because it's defined it to be 100. So out of all the space that is actually taken, I want this only this second row, this second column, sorry. I want to take 50% of the whole column. So let's go and see what happens. So now, if you can see clearly, you notice that last name has now picked up most of the space, half of it actually. If you actually measure it, it's going to be half of the whole screen, and leave the remaining half for the other one. So last name has picked up 50% of name, just as the way we defined it. So width in itself doesn't actually have to be only percentage. We can actually define width in HTML, the width something, not in percentage alone. Percentage is more relative to them, relative to the parent, but there's also in pixel, say 200 pixel, 200 pixel. So let me change the main parent one now. Let's change it to 200 pixel. 200 is a bit small. Let me use 500. Let me use 500. 500 pixel. But the issue with this pixel is it doesn't take into consideration the size of my screen, the size of my device that I'm using. So yeah, now I'm using a very big screen and I have some free space left here. But assuming it's a small device, say for example, I reduce my screen to be this small. It doesn't reduce the size of the table. It just makes sure that okay, now the table has overflowed to a particular side. It's still going to remain fixed at 500 pixel. 500 pixel. It's just the way different devices have different pixel counts, right? So on this particular device, it's going to count the number of pixel count on the screen, and it's going to assign 500 pixel to this particular table. So for a mobile device, this is going to be too long and probably extremely small. But assuming it's 100% is relative the way we are using it before, which I was using 100%. 100% is relative, so it says 100% of the off screen. Even if it's a mobile device, it's just going to take 100% of the small mobile device. So let me change it back to 100%. Let me change it back to the relative one, and then we will reduce the screens the same way I did now and see what happens. So now, if you notice, this full screen, right? Full screen took the whole page. If I reduce it to small screen, a smaller screen, it's going to take just 100% of that small screen also. So it's going to be relative to the page, to the whole page, right? I hope you get that. So even if it's a mobile device, even though it's small now, I don't know if you can see my screen, it's still going to be very, it's just going to reduce it to 100% of the mobile device size. Let me leave mobile. So that's actually defining the width. But also what happens if I want to determine the height? Probably I want this particular one to be bigger than this, to be taller than this. What exactly happens? So I can actually define the height of a row. Then I can come to the row, right? So for example, say I want to define the height of the first row, which is the header. I want it to be pretty bigger than this. I want it to be long, to be bigger and to be higher, like the height should be taller than this. So I can come here the same way we style the width, that we define the width size, we can define the height. So we're also going to use style, right? We are styling it. All this is actually more of like a styling, just putting some decoration into our tables. Style, then we put, instead of width now, we are working with height. Sorry, that's not spelled right. Height equals, but I don't want this guy to be 100% because it's just one of the heights. So I can decide the pixel. So for example, I want to use 200 pixel. The pixel px. Then come to the page, refresh, and now we can see that it has actually taken over 200 pixels of the screen. So this particular header now, it's very tall and has taken 200 pixels. This particular row, yes. So you can actually do that for each of the rows one by one and define that if that's what we want to do. So also the next one I want us to look at is um what of if, so this is actually called cold span, right? So what of if I've mentioned that our column for each of the rows should be the same number. Like in this place where we have 4, we keep having 4, 4, 4, like 4 rows, four for the next one, 4 for the next one, 4 for the next one. So that's the standard. We have to keep it that way so that it doesn't get distorted. Our table is presented the way we want it to be. We need to be sure that we actually present the number of columns. But it's possible that probably for this particular person, I want to join the first name and last name together. I don't want it to be separate. I just want these to be together, but others should still be where they are, right? So there's certainly something called cospan. This is the spelling. Cospan. It's actually more of like coulomb span. So I can define how many cell it should span over. For example, say for this particular table, I want to let me just write this first, then I can use that to explain. Let's just look at what the result looks like, then we'll come back for the explanation. So if you notice now, instead of it being two different rows, I actually joined these particular two cells together. And now is taking two cells together, but others follows. So, and then if you also look at the page, instead of having 4 now, I have 3. So what this particular code span does is, this particular column I'm defining here, How many spaces I want it to be? Is it just one column? By default, it's always is one. It stays, just one. But the end, I'm saying, how many do I want it to be? Is it just one? Is it representing only one, or do I want it to be more than one? Is I want it to represent two? So in this case, I say, okay, instead of it just representing one by default, I want it to represent two. So you should take the first two, and the remaining ones now assume that, oh, this one is actually taking position one and two. So the next one is going to be taking position three, and the last one will be taking position four. I hope we get that. So it doesn't have to actually be the first one. It could be in the middle. It could be anywhere. For example, I can decide to put for this last one, I can decide to make the second one to have a cospan. Cospan equals to two also. Or let me even use three. So it takes up the remaining ones. And delete the last two. I need to delete because now it's already four. So if this one is one column, then this particular second one is actually representing three columns. Three. So it's going to be under three columns. Let's save this and go to the next page, go to there and see. So now this is taking over three, right? So it's just more of like doing a merge, like a merge multiple cells together in Excel. So that's basically like what we are doing here. So also, it's not only it's not only column that we can actually merge. I can decide that I want to even merge these first two together. So for example, let me say instead of I'm going to bring, so let me say, for example, I want to have department and then just have the one column that represents department and then we put down that department in front. So I can merge two rows together also for a particular cell. So we do that now. But before we do that, let's just copy this table and create another table. So we have a copy of what we actually have initially. So the next one will be under it. So I'm going to create a new table. I'm going to create a new table for this. Remove this. So I just tried to create, let me remove this die. I decided to create a new table. So we can actually have more than one table in a page, right? I didn't mention that. So this was the first table we have before. Right? So I added another table under it. That was what I just did here. So this is the table we are working with before. And now I've created another table under it. I just created it so that we can see an example, so that we can continue with that. I don't want to keep modifying this particular first one again. So the next thing I wanted to trace is, what if you want to merge two rows? Say for example, I want to merge the first name of these first two first name together. How do you do that? So there's also row span. So the first one we worked with is column span. Then we have row span also. Just in the same way the column span work, that's almost similar to how the row span works. So I can define row span equals 2. So the only thing different is now this one now is not going to affect this particular row. What's going to affect is the next row under it. So this I've defined it as a row span. This guy, so I'm saying this guy should take up 2 rows. This first column I have defined here, take up 2 rows. So now this one how is going to be for this column, for this row, and for this next one. So I need to remove this guy because the first row is actually coming from the other one above here. I don't know if you understand that. Let me go to the page. Let's see the results first, and then we can go back to look at the code. So if you notice what happened now, the first row now, the first row has merged into at least the first column in that first row has merged into these two rows. I hope you can see the difference. What's happening here? So let me just go to the code and leave it for a while. So can we see the code? Let's just see what happened. The row span we define here affects this one. So it's because we put, so if we put 3 here, it's really going to affect the next 2 rows, the next 2 rows. I hope that's clear. I was playing like, okay, so the number of rows span we have here, determine how many rows is actually going to affect them. So because it's 2, it's just going to affect the next one, the space for the next row span, right? Okay. So the next thing we are going to be talking on is padding and margin. There's something called padding, Padding in tables, and there is margin. So within a cell, if you notice, like around each of these cells, there's actually a border, right? Around each of these columns that are copying. So just each one single one like this now, this Olatunji that is inside this rectangular box, is actually called a cell. This particular one, this just single one, is called a cell. Is the O from beginning to the end that is a column. The whole thing from beginning to the end is a column. The whole one from vertically is a column. The whole one horizontally is a row. But where they meet now, say this last name for Olatunji is a cell, just a single one. So within this, we can actually have the padding. A padding is the space within that cell. Like if you look at this border now, you notice Olatunji starts close to the beginning here, almost close to the beginning. I can decide to want to shift it, have more space within the O here and the beginning of this. So if I decide that space within it is the padding, so I can decide to increase it or decrease it. So how do we define this padding to this? Find the padding. We actually you still go back to the style itself. So let's go into our HTML page and define padding. So that particular one where I call the relationship, right? I can go to that particular cell. So this is the cell itself, right? Multiple of these are the column, but this particular one, this just one single one is the cell. So I can come to each of these. So for that pattern, you have to define it on each of them, or there is a way you can do it in CSS. But because we've not started talking about CSS, is why I don't want to go into CSS right now today. Because there's a way to actually do it for all of them at once. But for this part of this HTML, you have to do it one by one. So in each of this cell now, I can put a style, right? And then the padding, the property I want to modify, the property I want to style here is padding. So that's the space inside the cell itself. Padding. Then I can define it to be, oh, sorry, column. The attribute is style, right? That I'm styling it. The property I want to define here is padding, that space between it. And then I can define it to be 10 pixel. Let me see, 10 pixel. Yes, I hope you are following along. So I want to define the padding to be 10 pixels. So I say padding column 10 pixel px. Px stands for pixel. So you can go into the browser and see the results. Let's refresh this page and see. So if you notice now, there is a much more space between this and this. And because I define just the padding, they're actually going to apply to every side. It's going to apply to the left side, the top, the down, the even the right side. It's going to apply to all the sides, right? So that's padding itself is within the cell. Padding is within the cell. And the other similar one close to padding is margin. Margin is outside the cell. So if you notice, actually, there's a small margin between these two cells, between all these cells, between first name and last name. We notice that there is a space, a little space in between. But I can modify it to either be like, I can even remove it completely, that I don't even want to have any margin again, or I can make it to be bigger. So let's go here to, let's go and modify that margin. Let me do it on the last name first. Then we can start. It's just similar to that first one. Start margin. Then let's use just for pixel. Pixel. Right. I'm applying it on this cell, on the last name cell. So let's go back to this and see the result of what we did. Save. Oh, it's border spacing. It's actually spacing, not margin. It's spacing. It's called spacing. Yeah. I'm actually mixing other CSS together. So in that sense, we see merging, but in this table setting for this particular table is actually called spacing, it's border spacing. Okay, so it's border spacing and it's not for just one particular cell. It's the space between, it's the space between this, right? But I can apply it to the old table. So it defines the space between each of these cells. So right now we have quite some space here, right? So I want to make it to be 4 pixels. But I can apply it to the old table. Not like the padding that I have to apply to each cell. For the border spacing, I can apply it to the old table. So, and there's one thing I mentioned it last week, but we didn't actually do it much. So if I have more than one style, like now I want to apply multiple style to this table. I want to apply the border spacing. I already applied width. So to apply multiple style, you put a semicolon at the end of the first one, and then I can type another one there. Let's use 10 so that it will be clear. You can use 10 and then we can, oh, I've typed semicolon twice. So we can use 10 pixels, just similar to what we used earlier. So now the space between those cells now is more. Space between this border now, we have more space. Not as small as the first, so if you remember, we have to stable in this table. So the first table, I think changed it. So this is the fourth one. So most time there is a default attribute. I don't know the number of pixels for this, but there's a default space there, but we can increase it. And we can even decide to remove it completely. So we don't even want to have any space. So instead of making it to be 10 pixels or something, I can just change it to 0. If you change it to 0, what that simply means is bring everything together, no space. Can we see the results now? So I change it completely to zero. Zero doesn't need to define if it's pixel or something, even if it's pixel or it's percentage or anything. Zero is zero. So you can just define zero. So, and that will remove the whole border, the whole border space, the whole space between this is going to remove it completely. So we can also, in fact, even the padding, we notice by default there's actually still a little padding there. We can actually even remove it instead of increasing it to be 10. I can actually decide that I want to even remove it completely. I don't want to have any padding, change it to zero. And with that, the one I change, you notice now the O is almost touching the beginning of this. So it's going to just remove the padding completely. I can decide to change it to zero. I can decide to increase it. So I can decide to make it look much nicer. I hope we get it. I hope we're getting it. Hope you are getting this. Hope this is hope you are not confused. Right. All right. So the next one I want to mention is like we can actually have a table within a table. It's called nested table. It's nested table. We can have a table within another table. So just hold on a bit. I'm trying to check something. Okay, before we go to the nested table, so let's just even we can even have a background color. Let's just do a little bit more style on our page on our HTML page. We can define the color of this. We can determine the color of either the border itself or the table, the background color of the table and those things. So let's just style the color of the color of the border itself, right? So there is two ways of going about it. We can do it within the style and we can actually define that as an attribute. There's an attribute for table called border color. So let me see. Okay, before we even go to start, I want to see the result of this. Let's get to So if I want to determine probably the border, I want to give the border a color. It's taken like this, an attribute itself, and you can give it a color, previously bright. So I can, like an attribute on the table itself, I can determine the border color and give it a color, border color together. together. Um, let's check. Okay, yes, it's together. So we can determine the color of the border itself to like probably just giving more style. Determine the color of the border color together. Sorry, this particular one is together, not like other thing we've been working on. So together and just give it the color. So in this case, we define it to be red. Also, we can define the background color of the table. So for background color is BG color. BG color. So what color should we give this? Let's say gray, right? I hope you get it. So we can define the background color clearly. So so now we can move to the nested table that I wanted to mention before. So what I was trying to say before is within a table we can have another table. So let's create a new table. I want to add a new line here. I want this to be a space. So sorry about it. I'm just adding break line. Just give a space between the tables.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, is it possible to change the font color?
Yes, so we can actually change the font color
Okay, sir.
from I'm not sure if there is a color for if there is an attribute for it, but we can actually we can change a lot of things with the style. This style element itself can allow us to change a lot of things. So the same way we did color and change font color on in the test yesterday, almost everything we could apply in the last class. The color, the font size, the font color, everything. We can actually apply it in that we can do in this style. We can apply it to most things. So for the one we are doing here today, we can actually just between in the table now. So I'm applying it to the old table, right? We want to change the font color for the old table. So font color is color, right? It's just color. Column, the format. The attribute is color. What you want to change here is color. Color. Then the column. Then we can put the color we want. So we've been using the color name, right? For most of what we've been doing. But apart from the color name, there is actually an what's it now? An RGB hexadecimal color, right? Is it hexadecimal? Yes, hexadecimal. It actually stands for red. Let me just mention this a bit. So there is an hexadecimal code that is RGB. Yes, RGB. So what it actually stands for is an hexadecimal code. What it actually stands for is for the color code, right? What it stands for is the first two codes is hexadecimal. Hexadecimal in the sense that is base 16. So base 16 is just 0 up to F. So if you remember our base, so F represents, yes, F represents 16 out of 15. Yes. So each of these value can be from, so it's going to be six, it's actually 60 gigs. So it's RRGGBB. So the first two is the red, represents red. The first two represent the green. The last one represent blue. Oh, let me mix it up. Yes, RGBs. So for example, if I want to define red will be FF. So that's the maximum. It's from 0 to 255. Yes. So I think FF represent 255. If you check, let's check. What does FF represent? FF to decimal. Yes, 255. So if you actually convert it, this is an hexadecimal code, right? So FF is 255. So if I'm mixing colors, so just imagine that you are in fine arts class and I want to mix all these colors together. I pick the maximum I can pick in F in red. So I pick FF. Then for grains, if I want a red color, which means I just want red. I don't want it to mix it with any other color. So I can have FF. Then the green will be 0, 0, 0. Now, no O is 0. So no green, no blue. So this actually represents red. So if you want to use that instead of just the name here, you have to start with hash word hash with the code hash. So it is, you know, that actually I'm actually using the hexadecimal color code. So hash, then the first one starts for red, FF 0000. This represents red. So let me delete this so that okay, we can. If you remember, we did comment last week, so I want to comment this guy out so it doesn't appear in my code. So now I've changed this. I've changed from white actually to be red because this FF. So if you refresh our page again, so now it has changed to red. So it's the same thing. A lot of time when you actually start full development, you're not probably going to be using the name because a lot of time the color you want to use doesn't have a clear defined name. So it could be different mixture of different colors. So we get to see this a lot by the time you even do more of like CSS and things. So this FF 0000, that's red. So there is one thing that is weird for white and black. Actually, I don't know why it's like this, because I actually thought white should be mixture of like white should mean no color, but no, that's not what white stands for. White is actually the color code for white is maximum of everything. It's F F F F F F. FF red, FF green, FF. That's white. And black is 000000. Like breaking everything off. So if I want to change this back to white, I can use this. So that's white. All right. And also between white and black, you can have multiple color. So if I want to just have a gray, I could decide to make it probably D. If you remember, it's actually an hexadecimal code. It's hexadecimal, so don't forget that. The fact that I use DD doesn't mean that I'm just it's still an hexadecimal. I'm just mixing the same proportion of red, the same proportion of green, the same proportion of blue. So which probably give me a gray. It's still going to be within the gray color code. It's going to be along the gray. It's going to be between white and black. So you might not see the difference that much, but if you notice, actually this actually gray. This is not white again, right? I also let me mention the color code itself. I've been using name all through. Okay. So going to the next one, which is the nested table. This will probably be where we are going to stop today's class. We are going to stop it after this nested table. Um, okay, yes, so we are going to stop it after this nested table. So, for example, within this, I have my TRCD. Close TR. Okay, yes. So let's use multiple ones to TD. No, let's use TH data. TH. So I'm defining my headers. So the first one is name. The second one is let's just have two headers for this one. So the second one is address. So now for different rows, so I'm going to add more rows to this. So within this first one, so let's just create the first one. Say the name. Let me use my own name. So for the address, oh, sorry, this should be TD, not TR, not TH. This is not header, so it shouldn't be TH, it should be TD. So within this second cell, for some reason, because I want the address to be formatted in a particular way, I want it to be another table. So I can actually have another table within one of the cell, right? Within a cell, yeah. So within this cell here, I'm going to be adding a table. So it's a nested table. So I'm going to be adding a new table. So it's just like the way we define the table that is outside, the first table. So I am going to have a table. Then this table is also going to have the zone rows and columns. Uh, so I'm not having an header for this particular guy. I just wanted to have two columns. So I want to have something like the streets. Okay, let's just do this. So the first one is street name. So the street name itself. So the Coco Street. Then I can have other columns. So apart from the street, I want to have. This might be a bit tricky, and I just hope we don't get confused. I will try to go gently and try to explain what I'm doing, what I did here. Let's see. After we see the results. So let's see. So this one is zip code. I don't know the zip code, but let's put something there. So let's stop on just two. Let's have just two rows. So let's go the nested table. So if you remember, this is the no, where's nested table? This nested table I'm putting inside a particular cell. Instead of me just writing a content in it, it's just like the same the way the first one is. I'm putting a whole table to come inside here. So I can have a table here, not just table. You can actually have different things like images and some things. So I think we should just do one that we have image now. Oh, it's not showing properly because let's put border so it can be clearer. So the value inside the border is actually how thick it could be. So I can actually increase it. Zero is no border, then one is the how thick. I can increase it to be more than one. I can increase it to be two. Let's say, for example, I can increase it to be more than two, and then it will show like it will be thicker. So if you remember, but let's just look at what I was trying to for the nested table. So this is the nested table, right? This one column, and within this second column, I can have a table here for the table here that makes it looks much complicated, right? So now I have a table within a table. So we can actually have other columns. Yeah, it doesn't have to be. So for example, let's have another row. I don't know why I feel like typing some wool. Yes. So I can this. So let me just. This one is simple. I'm not putting the next. I'm not putting a column in this. I'm not putting a table in this particular column. Just a simple one. Just so I can see that it's actually just a table. That's why I just want us to do this. So we have the main table, right? And within the main table, we can have a nested table. So for example, this address of the first name here, I decided to insert the table inside this. And then within the table, we can define other ones. So we can keep adding table inside the table, but we are not going to keep doing that because that may become so complicated and difficult for human being to read, right? So within a table cell, you can have another table within it. You can have an image within it. So let's just do this. Let's add image to one of it. I hope you can do that. So let's add image. Remember the first class we the not first class, the second class we we worked on image. We are able to link image to our page, but let's just do it in case we forget. So we need to have an image in the same folder where it might not be the same folder, but for the purpose of this class, I'm going to put it in the same folder. Let me look for one image. You can see what's inside this. Let me just use let me use this one. So I'm dropping it in the same folder where this is. Let me rename it. So we are going to be adding a new cell, a new row. So the last row here, we are going to instead of putting address, we are going to actually put the image of the person there. So we can have an image within it. CD, CD. So remember, within this, we can define our image our image. So the image actually is IMG. I hope you can remember. So it's a single tag. It doesn't have a closing. Doesn't have a closing. Right. The attributes for the part of the image, that's the source. It's SCR. And then since both files are in the same folder, since both of them are in the same folder, I can just type the name P, so yomi.png. So I've noticed the extension actually. You need to know the extension of your file. So the extension is just PNG. If you can't see it, if you're not very sure, you can just right click on the image, go to properties, and go to properties. Then I think under is it security? No. I think click on writing. Right click on the image, go to property. Yes. Type of file you see there, and the extension is inside the bracket .png. So even if you go to security tab here, you can see the name here with the full part. So that's what we are using here. The name, then the image is then the source. Source is where the image is stored. Right. I just want to show that okay, we can actually have a image within it. My image is too big, so let's resize it. Let's resize it. You can put width. Let's use what width should we use? 150 pixel. Let's use 150 pixel. And the height, let's 120 pixel. But the image is not a square. So let's use 120 pixel for the height so that you can reduce. Right. So we can have multiple things. So what I was just trying to show us is we can have multiple things within our table. So, and if you remember, the border is possible that we don't have a border. So just think of the number of possibilities of things that we can actually do with this. Assuming we don't have a border. This is not looking too well, but we can, it just shows. No. So let's arrange this. Let's put this to be 100%. Let's put the member style. Let's make the width. Let's make it to be 100%. The size to be 100%. Let's put our style width equals to 100%. So that I can take the full screen for that particular one. So you can also take, so it's actually 100%. If I put it better, you see that it's actually getting to the space now. So these are, so you can put anything within the table stage. You can use the table to just structure the web page. You can use it to do multiple things. So, but for today's class, we just said to put an image and put a table within another table. And I think with that, we at this point we'll be bringing the class to like my own presentation is actually bringing it to an end. So I'm open to question. I want you to actually ask me questions regarding what we've learned today or previously. Any questions? Any question we have generally? Do you have any question? Let me hear.
So for me, I don't have any questions. So, but it will be okay if you can send the last part. You can send it to us because you are too fast. So I was unable to catch up.
Okay, the culture. Oh, sorry about that. And I think it was a bit tricky because I was typing a table within a table.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I
Yes.
understand.
So I'm going to, I think I didn't even send test file of the last class. Or I will send it to both the last class and now the HTML class itself, the HTML file itself. I'm going to drop it in
All
that
right,
chat.
thank you.
But I'm actually thinking, let me stop recording.